In this video, world leaders and rich people, what's going on? Hi and welcome to Dad's channel. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you're watching all the content and remembering to subscribe. Also comment and like the videos if you would, please, and thank you very much. So, what is going on in the world? We seem to have a lot of rich people who want to get richer whilst poorer people get poorer, and there seems to be a lot of social commenting going on about what's happening, and politicians just seem to have lost the plot. Or have they lost the plot? Let's have a look. At the present time, there seems to be a lot of questions flying around from famous people to non-famous people. Jordan Peterson, Russell Brand, Richard Vobes, they're all starting to question what's happening within society. The past few years have been strange and continue to be rather strange. We're all locked away in our own little prisons for the best part of 2 years in some cases, and some countries people were literally locked away and had to have permission to go outside. We were told that we would need vaccinations that perhaps we didn't necessarily need. It all concerns me greatly, really, and concerns me more and more. Whilst we were all having vaccinations and being locked away, there was a niggling doubt in the back of my mind, and it seems to be a growing number of people that this has happened to and happening to right now. Personally, I had 2 vaccinations, and I work in a hospital, but that isn't actually the reason I had them. I had them because it was the requirement so that I could go on holiday. And am I regretting that? Kind of, yes. They seem to be trying to sell the idea that we all need this and we all must have it. If you're old, have this. If you're frail, have this. If you're healthy, have this. Now, I'm not decrying vaccinations because as a child I had them. My own child has had his set of vaccinations as he grew up when he was a baby, and now he's 14. He's just had the last. But I'm not having any more COVID vaccinations, and that's the end of it. I'm just not having these boosters, and I'm sure there'll be another offer later in this year or just at the beginning of 2023. It's just very strange. There seems to be so little challenging of any of the information. It all seems to be being rushed into, and now there's questioning of, is it causing various issues for people? Is this quiet underground? Are there issues? Well, let's hope it's not storing something up for us in, say, 10 years' time. Remember thalidomide? It was the wonder drug. A few years later, it wasn't the wonder drug. Well, let's hope that the COVID vaccine doesn't turn out like that. Here in the UK, and I'm sure in other countries around the world, the media are regularly, or used to be, regularly challenging what was happening in the government, keeping them to account. Well, along came COVID, and all of a sudden the media just seemed to bow down and say, yes, this is the correct thing. And also, here's another thing. We had a bunch of fact checkers all of a sudden appear online on the internet. Anybody said anything, the fact checkers moved in and said, no, you're wrong. Well, they're fact checkers. Who's employing them? Who's paid them? What do they know? Are they really fact checkers? Or are they just somebody who said, I know, let's set up a fact checking scheme? Well, I'm not really too sure. Now, we'll try all this together at the end, but we've had the same political party in power for 12 years, and everything they seem to touch turns to shit at the moment, and it truly does. We have a prime minister who is so filthy rich, he has no idea and no context of anything that poor people may be enduring. We seem to be stuck in 2-party politics, and when it comes to the general election in about 18 months' time, the choice is terrible or terrible. The opposition party have been absolutely non-existent in the past few years. Where have they been? I have no idea. Now, people seem to have been talking about this new world order or reset. what I'm beginning to question is, has it just been happening in the past, not just 2 years, but just the past few years, quietly in the background? Has it already happened, and are we already in that particular process? I did a video about COP27, so please check that out, and a few associated ones actually. So if the science is correct, and they continue to tell us that it is, the fact checkers continue to tell us that the science is correct, yeah, there seems to be little to no effort by governments around the world to actually really get to grips with this thing, continually booting goals and targets into the long grass. For goodness sake, even here in the UK, we're opening a new coal mine. In Germany, of course, they've already opened several new coal mines, and the ones that they've got, they're making larger. Now, we are struggling with an energy crisis that we haven't needed to. We have the technology for many years to not struggle with an energy crisis. It's called nuclear, and yet the government have insisted that we adopt green energy, and quite frankly, we didn't need to. It's cost us a huge amount of money to do so, and it's not producing the amount of energy we need. We have nuclear, and we're in an energy crisis, and the government have just totally ignored it for years. Our current UK leader, Rishi Sunak, for goodness sake, the then chancellor, if you just go back through the COVID period, was handing out money left, right and centre, and a lot of it was stolen. Fraud happened. A lot of it will never be seen again. Meanwhile, the same political party lit the blue touch paper by voting in Liz Truss, who then proceeded to immediately, in 7 weeks, completely blow up the UK economy. Prices are high, inflation is high, the poor are suffering. So while our esteemed leaders were flying off in their juicy jets that were going to ruin the climate a little bit more, flying off to COP27 to ignore a lot of the goals that they'd already set, try not to agree on anything, and really not actually come up with a plan. Let's leave that to COP28, which is actually going to happen in the United Arab Emirates of all places. And let's face it, they had more people promoting use of oil and gas and coal than any other country. And they're going to hold COP28 there. Well, that's strange, isn't it? Anyway, whilst all that was going on, the World Economic Forum was happening. Now, this is a bunch of rich people and businessmen who are interested in what's happening with the climate change as well, or how their own fortunes, I suspect it's more their own fortunes, may change during this period of unstable climate issues. All they're really interested in is just piggybacking more money from the poor whilst they ride high. But there they were all flying in their huge planes. I do believe one plane flew at least 13 miles. So you know, what is happening with this reset? It's happening already. These rich people are keeping the poor people poor. Governments are not doing anything about climate change. So we had this term of forced imprisonment. We had, according to the same people who put us there in prison, that we needed some injections, which seems to now be slightly dubious whether we actually needed them at all. We were told that we would need to get used to higher financial outgoings. We've been told that we need to get used to high inflation, but they're doing everything they can to help us. We were then told that there are a bunch of heroes out there, and most people seem to be public sector workers. So get out there and applaud. Get out there and show your neighbour that you're applauding on a Thursday night, they said. Everybody open your door, step outside, look up and down your street to make sure your neighbour's applauding as well. It's all beginning to sound a little bit 1984. Well, fast forward to today. What's happening? All those heroes, those public sector workers, teachers, nurses, railway workers, postal workers, all going on strike. Surely, as they were heroes and we stood and applauded them, Surely they're more deserving than this. But rather than our government spend money on our heroes, the government is spending money on avoiding settling the whole thing. They've stated that they would rather take time, which is money. They would rather pay the train operators money so that the train operators don't lose out, of course. And they would rather spend the time trying to get some legislation through the House of Parliament, House of Lords, to stop people going on strike. Well, actually, it's to reduce the amount of people who can go on strike. And so the government are still refusing to settle this. But one of the government ministers, Huw Merriman, who's actually he's the rail minister of all things, has actually stated that the money that the government have spent on, well, paying out the rail operators and wasting money here and there, that could have actually settled the whole rail dispute. I mean, how ridiculous is this? But they're avoiding it. Why are they avoiding it? Rishi Sunak isn't even interested in meeting with people like Mick Lynch, who actually stated over the past couple of months that the money that the government have thrown away could have settled the whole thing. Yet where are the opposition then? The opposition party, the Labour Party. Strangely quiet is where. Seems that a party built on unions, built on working class people, doesn't really want to support them. Keir Starmer states that, well, it's not a good thing for a minister to be on the front line with the strike people because, well, there's not necessarily any benefit and other people might read too much into it. But that isn't the support that the opposition should be showing, surely. For goodness sake, and this is why two-party politics in this country has led us up a blind alley and we're buggered. And this isn't particularly consigned just to the UK. Emmanuel Macron of France has just stated that the retirement age should be increased, and of course this has upset a lot of the poor workers in France, and they are going to be staging strikes. Now, you would think that Mr. Macron would like to stick around. You would like to think that he gives his annual New Year message, which is due this week, I believe. But no, he's off to Spain. And he's taking a lot of his ministers with him so that they don't have to face the furor of striking people. This is all getting a bit odd, isn't it? And that is something that I see with this current government here in the UK. Everything they touch, as I said, just seems to turn to shit. They don't seem interested in the common man and just seem interested in themselves. We're now in a situation that we never needed to be in. The government, as I said, have wasted money, spent money on anything but resolving the railway strike when they could have done with money to spare. All they seem interested in and intent on is keeping poor people poor, making them poorer. We are energy poor in this country when we never really needed to be. They advised us and they told us, and off they went down the road of green energy, posturing that this is the way forwards, and no, we can't have that nuclear energy, it's nasty. But nuclear energy, we have the technology, nuclear energy offers our way out of being energy poor. But it's getting too late, isn't it? Because it takes 5 years to build a reactor and a whole power station, but we need it now. So in the past 20 years, we could have built 4 and our energy would have been secure. Whilst you and I are told to do everything we possibly can to save the planet, governments simply go along to meetings, usually by plane, ruining the climate a little bit more, and refusing to meet climate goals, pushing those barriers a little bit further down the road. Why meet them now? Ignore them today, ignore the science. Although, of course, they keep telling us that the science is correct. But then we've got to start questioning if it is, because they just keep pushing the goals off into the long grass somewhere. This will be the same government that just a few years ago was telling us that we were in a period of austerity, that the previous party had ruined everything, had spent all the money, and that we would be in huge amounts of debt, and how bad it was to leave it to our children or our grandchildren. But now Rishi Sunak, when he was chancellor, spent millions and billions. And now it doesn't seem to matter that much that we're going to be in debt and we're possibly going to be leaving it to our children and grandchildren. And no, you can't have a pay rise, and no, you can't have job security, and no, you can't have safety in the right conditions. They'd rather spend the money on finding legal ways to control you a little bit more. So we're running out of time, heading towards a general election in 18 months, and that will come around sooner than you think. Both parties, not really any choice of voting for either. I can't see any benefit. The current one just touches everything and it ruins, and the opposition just are unelectable, and we're wasting time. What are we going to do? I have no idea, but we're going to be left with a choice of just hopeless and hopeless. Well, I'll be interested to see what happens then. I'm sure, I hope I'll still be commenting on the political situation and various other things going on in the world. Thanks for watching. I hope that's given you food for thought. Comment and like, and do remember to subscribe, and I will see you on the next video.